...2014 wasn't really a year that I saw a lot of new movie releases, be it in cinema or on Blu-ray. Rather, I've been spending more of my time catching up on older films that I missed out, like Lawrence of Arabia, Last Action Heroes and War Games, because there were very few of those kind of eye-catching movies this year that actually made me want to go out in theatres and see it. Probably because there are just too many movies around for any single great one to stand out. So it's almost impossible to generate this list without leaving out some of this year's good unknowns which I have not seen yet, like Nightcrawler and Under the Skin. So this list consists of movies that I've seen from start to finish, and without further ado, let's begin the countdown of my top 5 movies of 2014. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, but I'm surprised that 2 of this year's Marvel's movies made it to my top 5. I had low expectations for Captain America: The Winter Soldier, but I'm genuinely taken by surprise as to how it really attempts to not just be a popcorn movie, but a slightly moodier, well-shot action thriller. Its attempt to set a slightly darker tone at the first film is not at the level of the Chris Nolan Batman series, nor is it attempting to be, but it's mostly successful without taking out all the fun that you would expect from a Marvel movie. It gave Nick Fury's character a purpose other than just some guy who gathers the Avengers together. The story definitely has plenty of holes, as pointed out by CinemaSins, but I can't deny that as I watched The Winter Soldier, I didn't just feel like I'm watching another standard throwaway Marvel movie out of the Marvel factory, but an actual movie with some nice visual aesthetics. Another Marvel movie that I skipped in cinemas that eventually won me over when I rented it on Blu-ray. While Captain America 2 was slightly darker and moody, Guardians of the Galaxy threw all that moody stuff out of the window and goes for all the jokes. Obviously, adapting a movie from one of their comic book series that no one has ever heard about seems like a desperate move from Marvel still not having the rights for Spider-Man and X-Men, but you have to admit that they made an entertaining and purely fun movie out of it, even if I have completely no idea of all the backstory and exposition in the background. I wish I had the time to do a full Blu-ray review of this movie, but I can safely say that even if you are a skeptic of the current trend of the endless stream of Marvel movies, this one is at least worth renting. Alright, I know this is technically another adaptation of a Marvel comic by Disney, but I'm just gonna ignore the Marvel hype and just talk about how I feel about it as a movie. If you actually break this movie down to its core, it's actually a traditional superhero movie that you've probably seen a million times before, especially now with all the Marvel superhero hype, so it is nothing special in that regard. But what really stood out to me is the character of the robot Baymax. I don't think I ever laughed out this loud in a movie theatre like this since Wreck-It Ralph, because Baymax stays in character as an innocent robot throughout the movie, but yet the lines that come out of him is still very unexpected and got me laughing. I mean, how could you not laugh at this? I know it's weird for me to say this, but although Big Hero 6 is not very innovative from a story standpoint, and the side characters could have been more fleshed out and more creative, the interaction and the humor between Hero and Baymax alone is enough to make this movie feel more unique to me than it otherwise would have been. I really wish Interstellar would be the movie that would be my number 1 on this list, and at some point it was. But I also have to be honest and admit that this movie has significant problems with its plot, characters and pacing that will turn some people off. But still, this movie never ceases to amaze with its jaw-dropping visuals of space and black holes, as well as providing some scientific credibility to its plot. Okay, the accurate science part has been done before, as some people will definitely point out to me with movies like Primer, but this movie does it on an ambitious and unparalleled large scale. This is definitely a hard sci-fi's fan dream come true, and it's a movie I look forward to buying on Blu-ray for the visuals and to put my sound system to the test. But I also have to say that this movie may just appeal to the sci-fi fans and may not be everyone's cup of tea. And for the record, I happen to be in that group that likes sci-fi. Alright, at this point, feel free to skip ahead or fast forward to hear about my number 1, but I'd just like to briefly talk about one movie that isn't exactly the best movie in and of itself, but one that inspired me as a filmmaker this year. That's The Angry Video Game Nerd, the movie based on the web show of the same name. The The last few years, I've been studying a few feature-length web movies like the one created by Channel Awesome like Suburban Nights and To Boldly Flee to comprehend what I could accomplish as a filmmaker with very little or no budget and still be entertaining. Suburban Nights and To Boldly Flee are very entertaining despite their limited production values. But what surprised me as a filmmaker is that unlike those web movies, the AVGN movie really does feel like a B movie that does not feel out of place when viewed in the cinema with its cinematic aspect ratio and all that stuff. And it was released in cinemas but not here in Singapore though. The creator of AVGN, James Roth, has always wanted to be a professional filmmaker, and the AVGN movie has always been his pet project for years. And although this movie does not exactly have that trademark humor that AVGN's fans expect, the story actually does work well enough on its own even if you don't know the nerd. For me personally, I'm pretty impressed at what they could accomplish from a production standpoint with a crowd-funded $300,000 budget. I do recommend you check it out and rent it on Vimeo if you want, but just be aware that what you will see is not a AAA Hollywood production, but a surprisingly well-produced homemade movie. I feel pretty uneasy putting a film like Gone Girl on my list because of its subject matter, but we have to give credit when credit is due, right? Because Gone Girl shows how a meticulous director can guide an actor's performance to be something completely unexpected from his or her typecast, and I'm specifically referring to an actor like Tyler Perry. How amusing it is that David Fincher can direct a comedy actor who is known to dress in drag and be annoying to play as a serious lawyer. Granted, that was a small role, but it shows that good direction can bring the best out of an actor and bad direction can also bring otherwise. And speaking of direction, David Fincher's crown achievement in this movie is transforming Rosamund Pike into the mentally twisted Amy. It's great that stories that show that some women are just as twisted as some twisted men are dared to be shown on the big screen. And for Gone Girl, it's done in a manner that's plausible and does not feel forced. Actually, that makes me feel even more uneasy. Also, usually I'm pretty skeptical of Ben Affleck as an actor/director, maybe because he was terrible in movies like Armageddon and Pearl Harbor. But in this film, he plays the role fittingly. Again, a sign of the effects of good direction versus bad direction. It also helps that the cinematography is brilliant and sets its dark mood right. Well, at this point, there may be better award-worthy movies that may not see a wide release until 2015, but as of this recording, Gone Girl is my pick for the best movie of 2014.